The direct connection of Bimini, Cuatio, Florida, the Caribbean, and Mesoamerica. The evidence pointing to a pre-colonial Florida being part of a major trading route and indicating the indigenous of Florida, Caribbean, and Mesoamerica were related. Mainstream academics seem to ignore the evidence pointing to migration and trading routes going from south to north and around the Gulf of Mexico, rather than north to south and no crossing of the Gulf of Mexico. It was said that only short canoes were found in Florida, so no overseas travel, but that has changed because of a fairly recent discovery. As a matter of fact, in 1993, Arthur Hibbert paddled from El Mujeres, Cuba, to Grand Isle, Louisiana, in 20 days, cutting straight across the middle of the Gulf of Mexico in a 17-foot kayak. Quotes him, "It was a 738-mile crossing." Columbus also recorded on July 30th, in 1502, while in Guanaja, Honduras, seeing a canoe with 25 rowers and cargo stacked in a small hut sitting in the center of the canoe. It was also recorded the caciques in the Caribbean with canoes fitting up to 150 people. As well, both indigenous groups from the Caribbean and Mesoamerica were seafaring people and experts navigating by the cosmos. Hartley Burr Alexander was quoted saying, "Arawaks gained a foothold in Florida, and their influence, in trade at least, seems to have extended far into the Muskogean territories to the north, while it may have affected even the Yucatan and Honduras to the west." Unquote. The Lucayan Tainos of the Bahamas called the mainland Cuatio, quoted by a Spanish chronicler, because the people there wear their secret parts covered with palm leaves woven in a manner of plaiting. Unquote. The Tainos of the Greater Antilles, outside the Bahamas, called Florida Bimini. William F. Keegan, archaeologist, quote, "The Lucayans were connected to a Caribbean-wide trade network. Admiral Columbus observed trade carried between Long Island and Cuba by dugout canoe. A piece of jadeite found on San Salvador Island appears to have originated in Guatemala, based on a trace element analysis." End quote. Charles Petit for the National Geographic News in June 12th of 2006 quotes, "Scientists say they have traced 1,500-year-old axe blades found in the eastern Caribbean to ancient jade mines in Central America 1,800 miles or 2,900 kilometers away. The blades were excavated in the late 1990s by a Canadian archaeologist on the island of Antigua in the West Indies. But the jade used to make the blades almost certainly came from Maya mines in distant Guatemala," says mineralogist, George Harlow of the American Museum of Natural History. End quote. White-tailed and brocket deer bones, one with Taino incised lines, found in the lower Antilles or lesser Antilles of the Caribbean, and the deer or the brock deer are native to Central America and northern lowland South America. New DNA evidence recently coming out as well shows a migration route from South America, Venezuela area, directly to Puerto Rico, again crossing the seas, crossing the open seas in a canoe. The oldest papaya seeds found in North America, a 2,000-year-old chili pepper seeds, and pollen of maize or corn found in Pine Island, Florida, as well as the processing of maize found in Florida, is found to be the oldest in North America. The language of the tribes of Bimini, Cuatio, Florida, was Arawak. Quote, "Its closest relative is apparently the Waru, spoken in the Orinoco Delta," unquote, by Granberry. For example, in Juan de Payeves ball game manuscript, he used the word bohio for the dwelling, which is the same word described in the Caribbean for the dwelling, and the Calusa's cacique, or principal chief, who repulsed Ponce de Leon, was variously called Stababa. These are two different examples of the Arawak language being connected, as well as there's many other words in the Arawak language. But it's interesting to note that Baba is one of the words for father in Taino, and the cacique was also a fatherly figure, was called Stababa. Another factor showing the migration route traveling from south to north rather than north to south, as many academia claim. The tobacco used for the original tribes in Florida was a South American variety, Nicotinium rustica. There's also a Taino Carib-style burial found in Hutchinson Island, Florida, as well as many similarities in burials throughout Florida that reminds you of burials in Puerto Rico and the Bahamas. For example, a male laid to rest with 54 beads in Puerto Rico and a male laid to rest in Florida with 52 beads, as well as positions and other materials that lay with the deceased in these ancient burials. Not to mention the similarities dealing with the burials in ball courts, which will be further discussed. Near Gainesville, Florida, was also found a West Indian axe head, stone axe head, that's made out of the same material found, I believe, in Dominican Republic as well in the Caribbean. Pre-colonial jaguars were also sacred to not only Mesoamerica but also to the Caribbean. And there was a pre-colonial gold jaguar pendant found at the Fort Center site in Florida. Caribbean-style gardening on top of mounds, other earthworks of the Guacata in Miami dominated the Calusa at the town of Wakati. And the Big Mound City Archeological Site have earthworks that would have raised any temples or houses above the floodwaters, along with having a central plaza or courtyard, as described of Cacique Stababa's, lined with a wall of conch shells, holding the same functions as in the Caribbean and Mesoamerica. These earthworks are found throughout Florida and was recorded in the chronicles of Spain's expeditions through Florida. This is also an architectural trait of several cultures in the upper Amazon basin of Brazil and Peru. Man-made canals originally stretching from Lake Okeechobee to the Gulf of Mexico, along with natural rivers, were used as a highway for traveling with the canoe. In March 2015, Naples put up 2 signs marking the deepest canal found in Florida. Quote, "It's one of 4 others discovered in South Florida, the only place outside Mexico where similar canals were found. A small section of the Pine Island Canal remains at a 50-acre Pine Island or Pineland site, once a major town inhabited by the native Calusa. The canal was dug mostly by an unknown tribe dominated by the Calusa Indians, which ruled the area from Fort Myers south to Marco Island. An 1877 expedition funded by the Smithsonian Institute showed the roughly mile-long canal was about 50 feet wide and 25 feet below ground. It was used from about 700 AD and likely was abandoned by 1660 AD." Unquote. Caribbean-style artifacts. Duhos, which are short wooden stools used by the cacique, medicine man, chief, and lead men, which are mentioned as short wooden benches in Juan de Piava's ballgame manuscript, referring back to that, and Jonathan Dickinson's journal, as well as the Jesuit Menendez, noted that in the early hours of the morning, Cacique Stababa would sit on a stool with his people around him to discuss the ideas presented by the missionaries. War clubs or macanas, body stamps, a version of tattooing for the Tainos of the Caribbean, masks, gourds, ear spools, shell tools found in Key Marco, Florida. A 25 centimeter long carved vomit spatula or purge stick made of rib bone of a manatee was uncovered at Altun Ha, a Mayan excavation site in Belize. A recent find in Manasota Key in Florida, a underwater archaeological site, may have turned up a couple possible vomit spatulas or purge sticks that would be used prior to ceremony to cleanse yourself in the Caribbean, as the black drink is commonly known to be used in Florida. Quote, they also have been studying a large plank with wavy carvings. Below that plank, they found 3 wooden pieces that resemble tongue depressors. Zoomorphic and Caribbean-style pottery at Crystal River, Weeden Island Archaeological Site, a mound near Bayport, Oklahoma, Florida, as well as many other sites in Florida. At the Crystal River Archaeological Site on Roberts Island is a step pyramid mound that is made out of the same materials and size of a step pyramid mound in a place near Tabasco, Mexico, and home to a limestone slab, a stele, on which is crudely carved a human face and torso. This is odd because the slab is one that is not found on other mound sites except locations such as the Caribbean, South America, and Central America. At this particular site, there were at least 4 of these large stones placed by the inhabitants in their ancient time. That's 4 steles that was located at the Crystal River Archaeological Site. Ball games. In all 3 regions, ball games were played. And they were played for all the same exact reasons: to settle disputes, for ceremonial, social gatherings, and many bets were wagered on all these ball games. There's some interesting connections in the manuscript of Juan de Piava's ball game manuscript, one being mentioned already above about the Arawak word, Taino word, bohio, a connection to the Caribbean, as well in the Popol Vuh creation story of the Maya. I find it very interesting that when the twins are with Xilbaba in the underworld playing the ball game, the ball ends up becoming Hunter's, which is one of the twins' head. And in the ball game played in Florida, although the ball sizes are slightly different, I believe they all vary in size in all 3 regions, but as it migrates more north, the size of the balls change even dramatically. So the size of the ball in Florida is much smaller, but the material to make up the ball in Florida would be including a scalp. It is also interesting to note that in the Caribbean, in the early days of the bate or ball court, elites were buried under the bate or ball court. In Florida, before starting the game, it was considered a good omen to bury the skull or scalp of an ancestor in the ball court. So there's quite a few connections as the migration ran from south to north, as you can see in the ball game in all 3 regions. The barkless dog Columbus recorded in the Caribbean was also found in Florida, throughout the Circum-Caribbean, but as well in Florida. The distinctive crested catacata, a raptor that does not migrate and believed to be brought to Florida by ancient Mexicans, known locally in some areas as the Mexican buzzard. The name catacata is said to be of Guarani Indian origin. Tararo, derived from the unusual rattling vocalization that the bird utters when aggravated. Ironically, the Taino of the Caribbean have a word for this bird as well, caraira, found only in Lake Okeechobee area of Florida, or Bimini, or Cuatio, other than Mesoamerica, Cuba, and slightly into North America. Conquistador Hernando de Escalante Fontenelle, shipwrecked in South Bimini, from the age of 13 to 30 years old, living with the Calusa, as well as learning their language, documented Tainos coming from Cuba, welcomed by Caciques de Baba, and indigenous peoples from Honduras coming to the west coast of Bimini, Florida, as well to, and was still present at the time of 1566. Caciques de Baba also governed a chain of islands called the Ucayos. The Tainos in the Bahamas were called the Lucayos. So the chain of islands called the Ucayos with the Y, and then the Tainos in the Bahamas, Lucayos with the L. A 1,100-year-old 40-foot canoe was found on Wheaton Island in Florida, confirming the overseas travel, debunking that no long canoes or overseas travel. That has now been proven incorrect with this find on Wheaton Island. Finally, the words of William H. Sears, quote, "I have presented at length elsewhere the hypothesis that much of the settlement of Florida, at least that in the west, freshwater zone from the southern end of the state well up into the northern St. John's area, is a product of people moving from the northern South America through the Antilles well in advance of the Arawak migration. There is some evidence in support of this theory. The use of conch shell tools in the archaic period in the St. John's region, the frequent presence of conch shell celts and adze in early contexts in inland South Florida, and the fact that Timucua, the dominant linguistic stock of peninsular Florida, is... Sorry about that, doing a recording in my car. The dominant linguistic stock of peninsular Florida is believed to be of South American derivation. Relative, apparently, Waru, spoken in the Orinoco Delta. A constant relationship is suggested between the northern South America and South Florida. At some time, James A. Ford suggested fiber-tempered pottery, and later discovered variants were introduced by the same route as the advocated for tools and language. Northern South America is also, as I have suggested elsewhere, the home for various terraforming techniques that enable savanna agriculture. By the date 1000 BC, suggested as the time of the beginning of settlement at Fort Center, we find available thanks to the South American savannas and the Antillean route, and well-adapted population, making fiber-tempered pottery in simple bowl forms. These forms remain characteristic of South Florida throughout its history, a strong contrast to the mainland eastern United States. This aboriginal population possessed more than pots. They cultivated maize or corn, which could be stored to stabilize and seasonally equalize their food supply. And they had a technique for growing it in the savanna, making circles that provided drain fields and possibly a source of fertilizing muck." Unquote. Thank you for listening. I want to give a couple shout outs to archaeologist Alan Breck for leading me in the right direction to start my research, as well as I want to give a special thanks to Theodore Morris and Maria Ramos for giving me permission to use their artwork. Theodore Morris did the painting for Florida, and Maria Ramos did the beautiful painting for the Taino. I will leave their links in the description, so if you would like to contact them for any of their prints or artwork, you may do so. And check back soon, because this research is ongoing. I've been working on it for the past 5 years, and it just keeps growing and growing. Thank you again. Hit the like and share, and have a great day.